No, it's
We
not.
splurge for the good times.
Yeah. it's like, woo-hoo.
Your tax dollars.
Nice. I approve.
Um. So about halfway through, I'm gonna be placing an order for all of us. So, is everyone set with like, we're gonna order from, I don't know how you guys pronounce it. Antigone's or Antigone's?
I have no idea.
It should be in Antigone's, but I don't.
Make up whatever you want.
Antigone's is a pizza place here. So, I'll just have you I'll have a menu and you can just choose what you want and we'll have it delivered at 5:30. That works out for you.
Yep.
I'll come around and get your orders in a little bit. Hey, all, if you don't have a name tag, already printed out for you, you can print one out there and we'll get started. Welcome. Yeah, 3 more people join online. Maybe we'll give it 1 more minute just for people to get settled in here, but. Only 5 people.
I'll move over here. You guys can take these 2 seats.
If you can hear me online, if you could put in your name, well, maybe not name, but just because we already see that, but where you're interning at this summer and where you are right now, we'd love to see that in the chat. You think you want to start, Peter?
No.
Yeah.
Wanted to open up the chat so we can see who's here. All right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming this afternoon. I am happy to spend some time with you this afternoon and talk a little bit about some things that you can be doing at the end of your internship to kind of get ready for the next step. So my name's Peter Osborne. I work here at the Maine Municipal Association. I'm the Director of Educational Services, but before that, I spent about a dozen years working at colleges and universities in Maine as a career advisor. So how many of you are still in school right now? In college right now? How many of you have gone to your career center? Okay, God, it's gonna have a little bit of a, so you're gonna hear me probably say half a dozen times. You should really go to your career center. Even if you've already graduated, you should still go to your career center. So I'm gonna talk a little bit today about some things you can do kind of toward the end of your internship. Some of it might be stuff you've already heard before. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of how to analyze a job description, how to really look at your resume and tailor it to specific things that you're looking to do. And also a little bit about cover letters. Are those things that you're already a little bit familiar with? All right, good. So I'll give you maybe some different advice. The one thing that I will say about like job searching or resumes or cover letters is you ask 100 different people for advice, you get 100 different pieces of advice. So I'll probably say something and you're like, well, my career advisor said this, or here's my favorite one. Well, my mom works in HR and she said this. Okay, that might be true. But you know, there are a whole bunch of different pieces of advice here. So, and we're gonna try to be a little interactive as best we can, kind of being in a hybrid format, but those of you who are on Zoom, I've got the screen right in front of me, so feel free to, raise your hand or just unmute yourself if you want to speak. You have something to add, and that is totally fine. So before we get rolling, I do have a couple of poll questions that I want you to respond to, so we can kind of get a sense of what everyone's doing this summer, what your plans are for after your internship. So if you brought your phone or you brought your laptop, you can respond to this poll either by scanning the QR code there, or you can just go to slido.com and type in that number. So what type, very broadly, what, are you doing communications? Are you doing research? Are you doing education? What type of internship are you doing this summer? Analyst, marketing, aquaculture, I was prepared for that.
We told Peter that there may be some aquaculture interns in the audience today.
Turns out there's more than one. Videography. It's like there are still 5 people typing. Engineering, research, county government, marketing, communications, actuary, GIS. Great. Cool. Banking, product enhancement. I don't know what that is, but sounds really cool. Engineering, cool. So we've got a nice, like a broad kind of representation of different types of internships going on this summer. So that'll be good for some of our discussion. Second question. For you, why was it important for you to do an internship this summer? What was the goal? What was the reason that you decided to do an internship this summer and not something completely different? Job experience? Full-time summer employment, gain experience. Your front door. Great. Spend the summer in Maine, that's probably the #1 answer so far. There are 3 good reasons to live in Maine, you know what they are? June, July, and August. Work permit. Great. So the theme I'm seeing here is to try to gain some experience, right? I'm assuming for whatever comes next for you, whatever that might look like, right? So the next question is actually, after your internship, what comes next for you? So you might be going back to school. You might be off to find a job. You might be going to graduate school or continuing your education. And then I do have a category that's like, I'm volunteering, traveling, doing something else, going on a spiritual journey. So what's your plan for after your internship? Is the poll not working?
I think so, yeah.
That's weird. Want to try it again? Huh. Well, sorry about that. For those of you on Zoom, you want to just throw it in the chat? What's your plan for after you finish your internship? Some folks going back to school. Aiden, hopefully off to the workforce. Back to school, back to school. How about folks in the room? How many of you are headed back to school for a year or more? Anyone ready to hit the job market? All right, anyone graduate school? Thinking graduate school? Yep, great. School, work, just graduated. Wonderful. So hopefully the conversation and what we'll discuss will be helpful for you, regardless of what it is you're trying to do next. Because if you're going to graduate school, and I used to do grad and law school advising, you're going to have to write personal statements and talk about your experience. You're going to have to submit a professional resume. It'll be good for you to have this practice to kind of encapsulate and really summarize your internship experience to inform whatever's going to come next for you. So let's start with the really, really, really basics here. Oh, wait, there's the poll. Can you tell this is my first time ever using this thing? Obviously, I'm not qualified to be PowerPoint. Right. All right. I wanted to start with really quick, down and dirty job description, resume, cover letter basics, okay? And here's how, these are 3 tools that really work in tandem to accomplish a really specific goal. How many of you have looked at job descriptions? You've looked up a job, or you've looked up an internship description at minimum, right? So you see when you look at a job description or an internship description, they really represent and they describe what an employer or an internship supervisor is looking for in a perfect world, in a potential employee. That's one thing to keep in mind, is that a job description, even an internship description, is a wish list. So I hire here, I have a team, I hire people. I have never hired anybody or even interviewed anybody who had 100% of what I was looking for in the job description. It's almost impossible, not completely impossible, but it's almost impossible to find 100% of what you're looking for. So that's the thing to remember, is when you're looking at a job description, regardless of what it is, you're never going to have 100% of the things that the potential employer is looking for in that job description, but you shouldn't be discouraged by that. You should still pursue it anyways. And we'll talk a little bit more later on about some things you can do to get that going. Your resume. How confident are you of your resume right now on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 being like, I don't even have a resume. 5 being, I'm a resume whiz. 1 through 5. 4, oh man, we got some 4s, we got some 3s, we got some 3s, 4s. John's a 3. All right, we got a 4, 3. All right, 4 is pretty good, because I used to like help people write resumes, and I'm not even sure I'm a 5. 3.5, all right, we're getting into decimals. Someone must be doing research. So your resume, that in the olden days, when people didn't have personal computers and you could go and like write a document at any time, these are the days where you had to take a paper copy and you'd go to like Staples and print 100 copies of your resume off. Your resume never changed. It basically stayed the same, and it never changed because it was really hard to change, right? Now, you probably are never printing a resume, or almost never printing a resume. And you have the ability to update, change, and tailor your resume at any time, any place, right? So if you remember nothing else from this discussion, and maybe you've heard it before, you really should be tailoring your resume for every time that you use it. There's really no good reason why to just keep sending out the same resume without making any changes to it over time. And the other part of tailoring, and again, we'll talk more specifically about this, is you really need to tailor it to summarize the skills and experiences that fulfill the employer's wish list. So if you look at a job description, that employer is telling you exactly what they're looking for. Exactly. I mean, it's like giving you the answers to a test before you take it. And it's on you about how you use that information. And so we'll talk a little bit more about how to actually pull out the most important things and tailor your resume. But that's the most important thing, is the thing that always drove me nuts when I was doing career advising is I would meet with a student and they'd say, well, here's my resume. And I'm like, all right, when's the last time you updated it? And they're like, oh, after I did my internship last summer. Oh, how many jobs have you applied to? Like 20, and they haven't updated it. So I feel, if you can't tell, I feel very strongly about that. And that's a point that you won't win an argument with me about it. How about cover letters? What's your comfort level with cover letters? 1 being, I don't even know what a cover letter is. 5 being, I'm a cover letter genius. Still got a 4, got some 2s, 3.5 again, 2. See, almost without fail, people find cover letters not infinitely, a lot more challenging than resumes. Why is that? Those of you who maybe gave me a 4 on a resume, but a 2 on a cover letter, why is that?
You have to actually write like in a narrative format and explain what's written in your resume and how it fits the job description.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, for some reason it's harder.
Yeah, why is that harder?
It's less like just listing out facts and more about taking those facts and turning it into a story or interpreting it in a way that explains it. And it's just more work than saying, oh, I did this.
Yeah, it is more challenging, right? And there is a lot of, and maybe you've heard this, but there's a lot of debate out there about even the value of cover letters. Have any of you heard, like, you don't even need to write a cover letter anymore, like, people have heard that?
It's like the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Cover letter is like, I love writing cover letter.
I love a good.
My
cover letter.
resume is like, I don't even look at my
Yeah.
resume.
Yeah, so there are like 2 types of employers. There's the one that will like really read your resume and not even look at your cover letter. And then there's another one who will like skim your resume and really read your cover letter. Can you guess which one I am? I'm the second one. I find resumes super boring. The cover letter is really where I can get a feel for who you are and how you might fit on my team and for the job that we have. Your resume is just gonna show me like I see your hand up, Caden, I'll get to you in just a second. But the resume really just provides the bare showing me that you have the base qualifications for the position. The cover letter really helps me to understand how you would fit onto my team and how you would do the job. And so the cover letter really is the bridge between your resume and the job description. And it helps the employer understand how and why you would be a successful employee. So, Caden, did you have a question?
Yes, my question is it beneficial to directly ask employers which they place more emphasis on in the job application process, either the resume or the cover letter?
You certainly can ask them, and I think most people have a pretty clear opinion. I would say that regardless, you probably need to be really prepared to do very well on both of those things. So it's one of those things that you can, if you have the opportunity to ask somebody, you can, but that doesn't mean that if someone says like, I don't even like read cover letters, they might not be the only person looking at your application. And the resume cover letter preference is really a pretty personal preference. Like I'm saying that I really read a cover letter. That's not true for every hiring manager in this building. We all are probably going to do it a little bit differently. So you need to be prepared to kind of do both really, really well. And we'll do a little more depth with those in just a minute. Sorry, this is my first time using PowerPoint currently. So I told you that your resume and your cover letter have one distinct purpose. What is that? It's only one. John, do you know?
It's not, hey,
What is it?
To get you hired?
Nope. I've never heard of anybody getting hired just from a resume and cover letter.
True. To see if you would fit within the team and if you have the qualifications
For what purpose?
for the job description.
Yes, you're getting so close. Really simple, it's one word. To get you an interview, it's your resume and cover letter. Look, see, I do know how to use PowerPoint. They get you an interview, right? So put yourself in the shoes of an employer, right? If I'm looking to hire somebody and I'm doing my wish list and I'm putting together my job description. And then I put out that job description and I get 50 resumes and cover letters. How do you think I'm sorting through those resumes and cover letters? How would you do it? What's that?
You're using an ATS?
I'm not, but a lot of people are. Does everyone know what an ATS is? It's an applicant tracking system. It's essentially just a database for managing job descriptions, although there are some employers who will use some like AI tools in an ATS to assess your resume on the first kind of go. Caden, I did see your chat and you are right. So when I'm looking at a job description and a resume and cover letter, I literally have the job description like a checklist in one hand, and I'm looking at your resume and cover letter, and I'm trying to check things off. By looking at your documents, I'm trying to find a reason to check things off my wish list from your materials. And the easier you make that for me, not to be selfish, but the easier you make that for me, the better off you're going to be as a candidate. Okay? So I want to start with the job description and really how you use the job description to tailor a resume and cover letter. So did anyone bring a job description with them? It's okay if you didn't. But if you've got a device in front of you, I might suggest maybe we take just a couple of minutes to try to pull up a job that might be of interest to you.
Just curious to even break it even further, like, where would you go to find a job description? Just right off the top of
Where'd you
your
go
head.
to?
Where's your, Google, Indeed,
Indeed's good.
LinkedIn?
Pretty good.
Did anyone know anyone others besides those?
Someone mentioned Google. Google's starting to be pretty good at job search stuff. Handshake. Yep, those of you who might come from a handshake school.
Did anyone know any else that are more Maine specific?
Live and work in Maine.
Wow, it's like you fed it to them.
Live and work in Maine?
It's like
Live and work in Maine as a job board. That's very good.
Yeah.
I really suggest that. And I would actually recommend that if you're not already doing this right now, I think all of you will have LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So it's Indeed. Go to Live and Work in Maine. Just humor me. Just so you can like have a new thing.
Yeah.
Because you already know about Indeed and LinkedIn and Google. I think you've heard of Google by now. So if you can, please go to Live and Work in Maine. And what are you gonna put in? How are you gonna find a job? What would you do? What's the first thing you're gonna do?
Location filter,
Okay,
and then the keyword.
maybe hybrid remote too, if you look for that. And then you said, Maria, what did you say?
And also a keyword.
Okay. Now, how are you gonna think of the keywords? Cause like, I can think of different, I could put like teacher,
Yep.
but you're gonna get so many different things, like. How are you going to select the keywords? That's really important.
So you've already like generated a bunch of words describing your internship. You could start with those as keywords, right? Folks put in things like marketing, communications, aquaculture, research, etc. Those are great keywords that you can start with. Sometimes, and I don't know if Live and Work in Maine has this capability, but some places like Indeed, for example, you can also filter by entry level careers or more experienced careers, things like that. But
Yeah, LinkedIn can do that as well.
why don't we take a minute just to find any old job description. It really doesn't even have to be anything too directly connected to what you're looking for. But if it is, that would be helpful. But we're gonna talk about kind of how to go through it and really read it and analyze it.
You know, and even those of you who are gonna go to grad school or gonna go back to college, stuff like this really is like, if you can, have it be something that you like legitimately would like to be, like you're actually interested in. You know, we want this to be valuable of your time. We want this to be authentic. So, you know, if it can be worthwhile for you, we'd really appreciate it. You know, we want to help you out a little bit.
Give me a thumbs up when you're good. If you're still working, that's fine too. Get 2 thumbs. One thumb on Zoom. Still looking?
I found one, but
Some?
not on the jobs website,
That's
but
okay.
didn't
Oh,
have it.
oh, that's okay.
Looking for.
All right. Anyone in the room still looking? I see a bunch of thumbs up on Zoom. No one here still looking? All right. So you found, what types of job titles did you find? What's something that you found that kind of jumped out at you?
Environmental health and safety specialist.
Ooh, environmental health and safety specialist. Nice. Got GIS analyst on Zoom. What other types of titles did you find?
Marketing and content coordinator.
Yes. Yep. Hatchery technician, clinical research assistant. So you are seeing some trends in what they might, some common words that are used to describe entry-level positions. Technician, research assistant, lab tech. I'm sorry, Madeline, what was yours again?
Environmental health and safety specialist.
Specialist, coordinator. Those are all common kind of job titles, keywords for entry-level positions. So you can kind of think about how you would want to use those words when you're doing your own job search. So in looking at your job description, you're going to see a lot of things. There's probably a lot of information there about the organization, right? Why would an employer give you a lot of information upfront about their organization? It's not a hard question. It's not a trick question.
Just so you know who you're applying to. and what to expect and if it's a match.
I think, yep, the point on Zoom, want you to weed yourself out before applying, absolutely. But they're giving you that information because they want you to use it. They want you to use that information when you're writing your cover letter or you're tailoring your resume. So that is really important for you to kind of assess the fit with the organization and the position outside of the specific job functions. What else did you see when you looked at the job description? Did you see required experiences and skills? Okay, so required is really anything, as an employer, when I'm looking at my required and my preferred skills, I'm really looking for you to have 90+% of the required skills in a perfect world, right? Those are my must-haves. And again, like no job, pretty much no job is any candidate gonna have 100% of everything that I'm looking for. But the required skills are the first things that I'm looking for as the hiring manager. The preferred skills, have you seen sections that say like preferred skills or preferred qualifications? Those are your nice to haves. Like if the required skills are the cake, the preferred skills are the icing on the cake, okay? And honestly, you can apply, and you should, if you're really interested in it, you should apply to a job if you have almost all of the required skills and none of the preferred, because it really is like it's a wish list, okay? So what I actually ask people to do often in analyzing a job description is to go through the job description, focus specifically on the skills and requirements section, and actually take a highlighter and highlight, you have to print it out first, but take a highlighter, highlight those skills that you have that are on the job description. Because you really want to assess the proportion of the skills and experiences that you have that they're seeking. And I feel like I'm kind of a tactile person in that regard. So I think like the physical act of highlighting them can be really helpful in doing that. What do you think would be like a good percentage or a good proportion of skills for you to have as an applicant that you would feel comfortable applying to a job? Do you feel like you had a good chance at succeeding at a job search? Like what percentage of those skills would you kind of hinge that decision on? Does that question make sense? Okay.
Probably like at least 3/4 of it.
3/4. All right, I got on Zoom, I got someone saying 70%, someone says 80%. Anyone want to say higher or lower?
I think it depends on the job.
Depends on the job. What do you mean by that?
I think if it were a job that was like a little bit higher level, and it also depends on the skills.
Sure.
If there's skills that you think that you can go in and learn, or that you could be like trained for, then I think that you like want to apply. And like for me, if there's things that I don't know, I usually address in my cover letter, like I haven't learned this yet, but I'm a really quick learner, and I would do well in this situation. Yeah, so I guess it depends on the skill
And
and also the job.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on the job, as you said, and kind of your interest in that particular job,
Right.
right? You know, let's say you have a good chunk of the required and preferred skills, but not 80%. But, you know, it's something that you're really, really passionate about, or you're really, really interested in, and you think you could convey that in your application, then it might be worth kind of taking a long shot on it. Generally speaking, I would aim for 70 to 80%. Like if you've got less than 70% of what the employer is looking for, and you can't necessarily make up for that in some sort of unique experience or some like really specific connection to that organization, it might not be worth your time to apply for that. Just kind of a general rule to think about. And then you're really gonna want to, and we'll talk specifically about how you might highlight the skills, experiences, and language in your resume and cover letter. Now, do you all know what I mean when I say soft skills? What's an example of a soft skill?
Teamwork.
Teamwork is a soft skill. Communication is a soft skill. Active listening skills are soft skills. I personally don't call them soft skills because they're not. They are really important skills, and soft kind of gives them less importance. I call them non-technical skills, also because I juxtapose them to technical skills, right? So what would be an example of a technical skill that you might have?
Understanding Excel.
Excel would be a technical skill. What other technical skills, especially those of you who might be doing research, what's like a really technical skill? Report writing, programming language, yep, I'm sorry,
Memos.
memos, yep. So you have technical skills and you have non-technical skills, and they're both gonna be really important for job applications. Typically, when you write a job description, you put the most important things first, and then you kind of order the skills and experiences in reverse order of importance. And so that gives you a little clue about how you might want to format your resume and your cover letter. Now, when it comes to technical and non-technical skills, technical skills can be harder to achieve because an organization might have a really specific, like maybe they're the only one that uses, I mean, Excel is a stupid example. Everyone uses Excel, but let's say they have a really specific piece of software or database that they use. And they might put that in their job description. But you would, like, how would you ever know that specific database, right? What would you do in that situation? How would you show that you can fulfill that skill set?
You can either show that you used a similar thing, or you can say, I'm a fast learner. And
That's two good approaches. So I always do tell people, don't ever admit a shortcoming in your resume or cover letter. Like, I know we're all kind of bred to be really humble and like, we don't want to oversell ourselves. We don't want to brag. But a resume and cover letter, when you're applying for a job, really is no place for you to like highlight your own shortcomings. It's just not, okay? And I think sometimes it does help to reframe the purpose of your resume and cover letter. That's why I underscored that it's really like the distinct purpose for your resume and cover letter is to get an interview. Your resume and cover letter are marketing documents, period. They're not your life story. They don't, you're not distilling the essence of your being onto two pieces of paper. That's not possible. Your resume and your cover letter are meant to market you as a candidate and show the hiring manager that you have the skills that they're seeking. Okay, so it's not the time to be humble or to say, I don't want to like oversell or certainly you're not going to lie on your resume and cover letter. There's a fine line there, but this is the place where you don't say, if they're asking for SQL, somebody put in SQL or R on Zoom, I've never used SQL or R before. No, you would say, I have extensive experience with XYZ database, and this is what I did and learned with that, right? And you help to make the connections so that they can see your skills are transferable. Yes, Kaden, you're right. Don't lie or exaggerate. Tell the good truth about yourself. All right, well, we kind of already did this part, but analyzing the job description, I do really find that it can be a really useful exercise for you to take some time and look at the job description and really dig out what are the most important parts of it that you can make connections to. In your minds, is it, when you think about the job search or even the internship search, because you've been through this, do you think it's better to put out 100 applications? Or 10 really well customized, well targeted applications? That's a trick question. I'm gonna ask it anyway, because
Option B.
option B, you're right. Job searching is 110% a quality over a quantity game. 100%.
I met an intern somewhat recently who said that it applied to over, it was in the hundreds of jobs, all through LinkedIn. I was like, you're just wasting everyone's time.
Yeah, it is always a little bit of a red flag. If I ever talk to someone and like I get the sense from conversation, like you're a well-adjusted human being who would do well in a workplace, but you've sent out 100 job applications and you haven't gotten any response. It might be a you problem. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry, but maybe if they're like very similar jobs. No, you're right. I think there are some ways that you can save yourself a little bit of work, but I definitely would not just take the same application and send it out to 100 employers. It's just not a good investment of your time. It's really, really not. Caden, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, the thought of writing 10 well-written by your descriptions, well-written cover letters in one day does sound a bit daunting to me.
Mhm. It is daunting.
Can I say something?
Yes,
So,
please.
Kaden, what I do, not that I'm applying for a job right now, I have a couple cover letters that I've written over time. Obviously, I'm a little older than all of you. And I make a copy of it. And then I keep the intro line. I like my intro sentence. I just keep it for everyone. And I just change out, obviously, the employer name. That's given. And I tailor my paragraphs to fit what I think they want. I would say about half of it is rewritten and half of it is a regurgitation of or a copy of it. So really, it's not that much work. You don't need to rewrite every cover letter. Use the cover letter to your advantage. And just make a copy and then save all your copies, because 5 years later, you might actually find yourself reusing something. Because I've been a teacher, I've been a Peace Corps volunteer, I worked at a nonprofit, been a camp counselor, I've done all these different things. If I was to go and apply to be a camp director next year, which I'm not, I would maybe find my old cover letters from when I wanted to be a camp counselor.
Yeah. There are definitely parts of cover letters that you can reuse and recycle. But generally speaking, and here's the reason I tell people to always start from the ground up. We are too prone to making mistakes. If you make sometimes if you just like create a cover letter template and you just go in and change a couple of things, you're prone to missing one thing. And all it takes is for you to put the wrong employer in a cover letter once and you're out of the running because you made like a tiny little careless mistake. I've seen it happen. I have actually resisted the urge on hiring committees to throw people out of my applicant pile for that mistake. But it was like everybody wanted to get rid of that person just because the employer was wrong. So it's really worth the amount of time. Caden, you're absolutely right. Like it's incredibly daunting to think about sitting down and writing 10 really well tailored cover letters in one day. I would tell you not to do 10 in one day. Your eyes are going to cross, but get into a routine for sure. And isn't John giving some really good advice? Guess who his career advisor was? It was me.
Yes.
Way back when.
Way back. When was that?
I don't know, when did you graduate?
2014 and 15.
Yes,
Yeah, so
or you went into the Peace Corps.
Peter was my career advisor at Farmington.
Yep. All right, so we've talked about any other questions, thoughts about like analyzing the job description? Have you done that before? Is that kind of a practice that you've done? Maybe not in the same format we discussed? Any tips or tricks on best ways to do that, to analyze it, or things that you found really helpful?
Like even going so far as to take like the descriptive words. Like if they say analyze, or if they say like very specific keywords in the job description, make sure that in the cover letter or in your resume, you utilize those same keywords, like just one to make it easier, like you said, if somebody's reading it, but also if it's a larger company and they're using some sort of software to scan through, like having the exact replica to pick it up. is helpful.
Absolutely. It's almost like you sped ahead in my slides.
Sorry.
No, sorry. Hayden, your hand's up.
What if the major or relevant coursework experience listed as a required qualification
Mhm.
falls outside of the 80% qualifications falls outside of the 80% qualifications you may meet?
So are you saying that like you would have most of the skills, but not some of the relevant coursework?
All of the skills and experience, but
Yeah.
not the academic major or background a job description is maybe looking for.
Yeah, so I would include those in that 80%, that proportion that you're looking at. That's part of the whole package, and I've definitely, well, the work that I do, like, we're not looking for a specific major or anything like that, but I think a lot of people are willing to be flexible on that if you have a lot of the other things that they're looking for. So the vast majority, except maybe some really technical positions, it really doesn't matter what you majored in. I would say probably 80+% of jobs, it doesn't really matter what you majored in. And I always feel like the bad bearer of bad news because people agonize over what they major in. The truth is that in most instances, it doesn't really matter. I'm just reading some comments here on the meeting chat. So doing some basic research on a company and their values has helped me in addition to reading the job description. And then someone else saying that they spend a fair bit of time poking around the company website to try to get some of that information. Those are really helpful tips. Thank you. All right, so moving on to your resume. And we had a lot of folks in the room who were like 4s on your resume, which is great. So we're not going to talk everything about a resume because we could spend entire days just talking about your resume. But what I want to talk about specifically is how to target your resume. So as I said before, the goal is really to customize your resume so that it relates directly to the skills and experiences that are outlined in the job description. And Hannah was spot on. Lift the language from the job description and use it in your resume. It's not stealing. They're telling you exactly what they want to read in your resume. And if I put analyze in a job description, it's because that's the word that we as the employer use to describe that work. And if you're speaking to me in the language that I'm using about your experience, it's going to be so much easier to make that connection. So use those verbs, okay? The formula that I espouse when we talk about bullets on your resume is action verb plus results equals impact. So what's an example of a good action verb? You know what I'm talking about when I say action verb? All right. What's a good action verb?
Created.
Created. Hannah brought up analyzed. What are some other action verbs that you might use to describe your managed? Led. These are all great. Can I give you some examples of bad action verbs? They're technically action verbs, but they're not very good ones. and this is one that, I'm sorry, a lot of college students will use, oversaw. An awful action verb, awful. It's awkward and it doesn't really tell me anything. Or I'll often see people start, like a bullet point on their resume by saying, responsible for. Neither of those words are verbs, let alone action verbs, so. Hayden, offered a couple too, operated, that's a good one, volunteered. You really want to let the verbs that are used in the job description drive your word choice in your resume. So in the job descriptions that you've looked at already, if you've still got them in front of you, what are some action verbs that you're seeing that you might use in your own resume? Conduct, yep. Enforce. Yep.
Elaborate.
Elaborate, that's a good one, and that's a good like non-technical skill. Yep.
Engage.
Engage, you look like you're not sure about it.
I don't know, it just sounds very vague. It says, okay, the point says engage with the community through social media channels. So, I guess.
I think if you're talking about working with other people, it would be a good thing to use. Like if you were
Yeah.
applying for like a teacher position,
Mhm.
and you've had previous experience, you could talk about engaged with
Or even
children ages, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Or marketing communications,
Mhm.
because a lot of times marketing, you're talking about audience engagement. So that is a word that's frequently used, right? That's a good example of one that that's the language that that organization uses. So you would want to try to incorporate that into your materials. What about any other good action verbs? Collaborate, good one, yep. So those are all good active verbs that you might want to use in your resume. If you go to Google and if you search for good action verbs for resume, there are lists, pages of active verbs that are clustered by skill area. So if you're trying to show your communication skills, they'll give you a dozen verbs you can use to show your communication skills or your research skills or your analytical skills, things like that. So that's the first part of the formula, is the action verb. Yep, a couple more on Zoom: wrote, conducted, assisted, all good action verbs. So when we talk about results, what are some things that you think an employer is looking for in terms of results? What are some things or some ways that you could frame that would be especially impactful to a potential employer?
Numbers?
You're right. So if you can quantify things, I was used to, I would work with a lot of interns, and one of the common things I would see is answer telephone calls. And I use this as an example of why quantifying things when you can is really important. Because that could mean that I answer 5 telephone calls every week. Technically, that would be true, right? Answer telephone calls. But if I say I answer between 100 to 150 telephone calls every week and have to manage that, where those go and taking messages and all of that, those are 2 very different experiences. So that's just one example of why quantifying can be really helpful in laying out the results. Edited thousands of individual pieces of data. Yes. Yeah. I don't know if anyone watched The Office. Yeah. So Daryl, the warehouse manager, is applying for assistant manager job. And on his resume, he said something about moving millions of pieces of merchandise. And somebody says, millions of pieces of merchandise. He's talking about individual pieces of paper. He works on a paper warehouse. So you can see how quantifying can be, really important. Are there other tips or tricks that you would give for making the results to be really, impactful on your resume? Or ways that you've described things on your resume that have worked particularly well?
Like if you did something that led into the increase in efficiency,
Mhm.
and if there's a number that you can assign to it, that's nice, like 20% efficiency increase or
Yeah.
something.
So if you can spell out the impact, right? We're using all these words, results, impact, but what was the outcome of your work? Right? So if you describe what you did just in terms of the input, but you can't tie it to the bigger picture of how that impacted the organization, you might have less of an impact on your reader, right? So if you could say, you know, I developed a social media strategy, developed and implemented a social media strategy that increased our Instagram engagement by 150%. Right? You're telling them what you did and you're using your action verb, but you're also helping them understand that you are results oriented and you're quantifying what those results actually are. So let's look at some examples of what good impact statements might look like. And I really focused on quantifying things really primarily here. So, you know, developed 3 new patient safety training modules utilized to train new staff. So you have a good, strong action verb there. You're quantifying what it is that you did. And then you also included what the purpose of that project was. Educated members of the public about new regulatory requirements through 10 live workshops around the state. So again, using a strong verb, you're telling me what the purpose is, and then you're also quantifying how you went about to achieve that goal. Analyzed results from 250 online survey responses to determine the greatest areas of need for new parents. So again, quantifying what that, you know, how you went about doing that, what the purpose of it was. The only thing that I might improve about that last one is how did you analyze? Did you use a specific data analysis method or a certain piece of software? So those are just some examples. Now I want to challenge you to actually think about, to get a head start on updating your resume from this summer, and actually come up with a couple of impact statements about your own experience. And we're going to try to use this formula, and there's some paper here if you want it. We got pens. But take a few minutes to think about your internship this summer and come up with 2 or 3 impact statements that you could actually put on your resume using action verb, results, and impact. And then we'll have an opportunity to maybe share those. Does anyone need a piece of paper or a pen? All right, we'll take just 3 or 4 minutes and then we'll reconvene on that.
I just, for those in the room, I took your order, but apparently Antigone's Pizza is on vacation until August 8th.
Oh, well, good for them.
In a really strangely horrible voicemail. So your order, I'm gonna have to amend that. Is it okay if I, for those of you who got like lasagna, would you be okay with a pizza?
Yeah, sure.
What kind?
Vegetable pizza?
Veggie pizzas? What- Barbecue, Hawaiian, peanut pepperoni, meat?
Yeah.
Pizza, okay. So veggie. And then Sarah, you ordered.
Tuna.
What would you
thank
like?
So just pizza, right?
I could do something. This chicken sandwich, there's some different salads. You know,
Yeah.
not big pizza. There's a glaze, there's some pastas,
I'm getting pasta.
chicken and broccoli Alfredo, shrimp and.
Could you go back to the
shrimp and
previous
scallops,
slide with the
shrimp-
examples?
yeah.
I think.
Ooh, that sounds amazing.
Okay.
I can do that.
Yeah, and then, Peter, what pizza would you like?
I will eat any kind of pizza.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna order a couple.
All right.
That's
It
ridiculous.
takes long summer vacation.
And the voicemail is like, they're busy in the background.
Oh.
It sounds like, it's like, it sounds like a prank.
Oh,
It's, I've never experienced that
I
before.
really just don't want anymore.
A 2-week vacation for a pizza place.
Right.
From your internship this summer. That you will use on your resume.
So yeah, to go. It's gonna be somewhat of a big one, not massive, but. Yeah. Okay, can I get 2 backyard barbecue pizzas? 12-inch. Can I get a Greek pizza?
Give me a thumbs up if you're good. If you're still working, that's fine too.
Want to just pick 5 of those? No, I got it in front of me. Can you just pick 5 of those? Can you just pick 5 of those that you know?
Is it possible to maybe increase the AC a little bit so it's not as cold?
I can turn it down, but,
Okay.
this building is
It is too cold, like the Wi-Fi
a
password.
little finicky.
Yeah.
See what I can do.
Thank you.
Oh, man, they have it on 65.
My God.
Lincoln County Planning.
Oh, of course. It's also right there.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm my glasses, so I haven't even pulled it.
And.
Yeah, it's too cold. So it is. Why didn't you say anything? No, it's too cold.
Yeah, I think it's a plan.
Also do
I
research.
think it's a line from the neighborhood song.
I'm sorry, I tried to fix it, but I don't know if it's gonna make it.
So where do you go to school? Thank you for trying.
Going.
Is it
Harvard and George? He's close to Nelson University.
So lowercase l. Yes.
Political science and environmental studies.
I'm studying farming.
Very nice.
All right, so why don't we, you may not have all of them, but hopefully you've generated some ideas.
Yeah.
And there have been a few that folks on Zoom have shared, which, so I'll read a couple of them out loud. Designed dozens of maps in ArcGIS Pro for 4 KV-COG member municipalities to serve comprehensive planning purposes. And that's from Caden. That's really, that's really descriptive and has quite a bit of the results and quantifying the quantities in there too. Let's see, shadowed clinicians in neurology, neuropsychology, and clinical psychology across 20 hours of patient-facing work. That's really from Yaren, really good for clinical research assistantship. Because those are the types of things that, you know, if you're going to be a grad student or a research assistant, they want to see that you have had some hands-on experience with the clinical work that you'll be going into. Colby has generated a training video to help establish a safety-oriented culture and integrated OSHA guidelines into a customized video experience for maximizing new employee policy retention. So those are really good descriptive impact statements with good active verbs, quantities, all of that. Anyone in the room want to share what they came up with? Yes.
So I'm right now an intern, a payroll intern at the Bangor Savings Bank. And I wrote completed IBM Cognos Analytics training, designed an automated client termination report, replacing 2 manual Excel spreadsheets.
I might even split those up into 2 different,
Oh,
because it's 2 different skill sets, right? Like one, you're talking about having completed a certain amount of training, the other one about designing
oh,
a new process. Yeah. So I would split, and that's probably another good general rule is that try to think of each of these bullet points as distinct skill sets and give them each their own bullet point. Yes.
Conducted a 2-hour workshop to determine what community members are concerned about in the community.
That's a good one. Yep. Conducted a good, strong active verb. You quantified, you know, what you did and what the purpose of it was. Very good. Anyone else?
Yeah.
I don't have to share, but I'm sure you have some really good things brewing. So this is the type of kind of exercise that I hope that you'll go through each time you find a job that you might want to apply to. And I think to John's point earlier, I always tell folks to have, you really should have multiple versions of your resume. You can have what I call like an archive resume or a master resume that includes everything. And it includes all of the potential, you know, for your internship, you might have 10 different bullets that you've written that would all speak to 10 different specific skill sets. You're not going to necessarily put that version of your resume out for job descriptions, but you can take it and customize it really easily for every job application that you put out there. So I do find that that can be really helpful. The other tip that I'll give you is when you apply for a job, save everything about your application. Save the job description. Copy and paste it into a Google Doc or download it as a PDF. The reason is sometimes if you were to get invited for an interview for that job, and let's say the job's not accepting applications anymore, that job description might have disappeared from the web. And you can ask them for a job description, that's fine. But it's going to be a lot easier for you if you've already held on to a copy of it, because then you can use it to prepare for the interview. Same for your resume and your cover letter. You want to save the specific versions of those every time you use them. Any other questions, comments on the impact statements before we move on? Yes.
Obviously, based on, you know, a job description, there could be, you know, 6, 7, there could be many different things that you could highlight. But obviously you want to also keep the resume short and consistent. And so how many impact statements roughly per position would you recommend on average?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, 3 to 5. But if you, yep, Caden had the same question. Generally speaking, 3 to 5. The exception might be that if you have a position that was really, really directly related to whatever you're applying to, or that you were in for a long time, like as you get further along in your career, if you're in a position for 5 years or longer, like, don't put just 3 bullet points, because then people are gonna think you didn't really do much over the course of 5 years. So it really depends, but a general rule is probably 3 to 5 per position. All right. So let's move on to talk a little bit about cover letters, which I think are everybody's favorite thing. Everybody's favorite thing. So, as I said before, if your resume is really meant to show what you can do, or sorry, if your resume is meant to show what you can do, ignore the typo here, then your cover letter is meant to show how you've done things and why you're interested in this opportunity. And your cover letter is really meant to make your resume come to life and tell the story. Okay. And I have some really, I have like a really simple kind of framework about how you might think about a cover letter that some people might find helpful. How many of you, when you were in high school, learned how to write a 5-paragraph essay? Hopefully everybody. A cover letter really is not that different. Oh boy, so many times on Zoom, yes. So it's a format you should be pretty familiar with, right? So the only difference is that your cover letter generally isn't going to have 5 paragraphs. Probably gonna have 3 or 4. A couple of cover letter basics. I would say when we talk about length of your resume, probably as a new grad or a student, your resume really shouldn't be longer than 1 page. There are some exceptions to that, but not many. So generally speaking, you're aiming for 1 page. As you get more professional experience, you can go on to a 2nd page as you amass more experience. Your cover letter should never be longer than 1 page. That's a hard rule. Don't, as an employer, if you can't succinctly and concisely communicate to me in 1 page, like, I probably don't have time to read your emails. 1 page, single spaced, block business letter format. Do you know what I mean when I say block business letter format? Well, a business letter format has, you know, an address block and a date, salutation, all of that. But the difference between a regular business letter and a block business letter is that in a block business letter format, you don't indent your paragraphs. It's all 1 block. Standard margins. So don't try to get around that 1 page by making your margins a 1/4 inch. It's not going to work. And really standard 11 to 12 point font, fairly conservative font style. And it really should be 3 or 4 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs maximum, including an intro paragraph, 1 or 2 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. And one of the big differences between your resume and your cover letter, your resume is written in 3rd person. So there are 3 words you never use in your resume. Do you know what they are? There are lots of words you shouldn't use in your resume, but I, me, my. You don't write a resume in 1st person. But you do write a cover letter in 1st person, okay? So it should be written in the 1st person voice. And here's kind of the general formula that I think about. In your intro paragraph, think of it as your introductory paragraph for a 5-paragraph essay. So you're introducing somebody to the topic, which in this instance, it's you and your interest in this company or this position. So a good way to do that would be very clearly, here's the reason why I'm writing. I'm writing to apply for this position at this organization. Very clear, very simple. I'm interested in this role because of why. Like, this is your opportunity to show them that you've done a little bit of homework. You've read a little bit about what they do. You can express in a statement why you're interested in this role. And then the other most important part of a 5-paragraph essay is your thesis statement. That's your central argument. What are you trying to convince your reader of? Your cover letter is a piece of persuasive writing. You are trying to persuade your reader that you have the skills that they're looking for in the position. And just like in an essay, you probably can't highlight every skill in your cover letter because you just don't have space. But what I often tell people to do is to take probably the 2 or 3 most important skills or experiences that you want to highlight. And that's your thesis statement. That's your central argument. So I would bring a strong skill set in data analytics and advanced communication abilities to this role. That's your thesis statement. So if that's your thesis statement, what are you going to do with your body paragraphs then? You said you all learned about 5-paragraph essays. I'm a little skeptical.
You expand on each of those.
You provide evidence, right? So if I say that I have a strong skill set in data analytics and advanced communication skills, then my body paragraphs are going to provide evidence to back up those claims and convince my reader that I have those skills. What's the best way to do that? To provide that evidence? Examples, yeah.
Quality and quantity.
Quality and quantity. I'm after telling a story. I think your body paragraphs are the perfect place for you to tell a story. Granted, it has to be a very brief story because you only have a paragraph, but telling a story is going to be the best way for you to get that point across. So I would say my body paragraphs, as an intern at Osborne Pharmaceuticals, I led a data analysis project so I have a very descriptive topic sentence, and then I go into some of the details about how I led a data analysis project and how that gave me a strong skill set in data analytics. In my second paragraph, I'm going to work on advanced communication, or I'm going to provide evidence for advanced communication abilities. So upon completion of the project, I worked with a team of other interns to present our findings to members of senior management in a presentation. And then you tell the story about how you used your superior communication skills to get that point across. Any questions or comments on those things? Does that make sense? Do you think it would work for you? Is that kind of a pretty workable way to approach this? Are there other ways? Because I saw some people who were like 4s for cover letters, which tells me you're almost a cover letter expert. Is there a different way that you've done it that's worked well for you in the past? It's safe to disagree with me.
I think sometimes in my conclusion, because usually I do like environmental work, I talk about why like Maine's environment is important and special and try to lean in on that as well.
Yep, that's really good. And that could go in your intro or your conclusion or both, actually. Yep.
Yeah, usually it depends on the thing I'm applying to, but if like I find like kind of the company's overall like message on their website, I might include like how I can kind of connect to that and how I might like be an asset to the team based on that message. I kind of like with like including the specific words.
Yep.
I'll kind of use that in my cover letter.
Yep. Those are really good strategies. And Caden has a question. What about the introduction of somebody you've worked with in the past whose field relates to the job you're applying for? So the example he gave is in college, I had the honor of forming a strong connection with our sustainability coordinator. Caden, I think that can be a helpful thing to talk about in a cover letter. You just want to make sure that the emphasis of what you're talking about are really, that you don't stray from really focusing on your specific skills and experiences. So if you can do that in a way that emphasizes what you would bring to the table, then I think it can be a really beneficial strategy. So then the last part, of course, of the cover letter is your conclusion. You really want to do 2 things in your conclusion. The first is to reiterate your interest in the position. And I think some of the strategies that you were talking about, you can restate your interest or the connection in your conclusion. The other thing you want to do is let them know what you hope the next step will be. And that's an interview. And so I'm a huge proponent of explicitly saying that I would like to talk to you in an interview. And there are ways you can do that that don't seem like too pushy. So my example was I'd be very excited to work at XYZ Analytics and would welcome the opportunity to speak with you in an interview. If you'd like to arrange an interview, please contact me at blah, 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 blah. Any other strategies that people have used in the conclusion that have worked pretty well? Has anyone explicitly asked for an interview? No? Why not?
Too bold, I guess.
Too bold.
I don't know.
A piece of persuasive writing.
True, but usually then you just write, thank you for your time and consideration.
I usually write, I look forward to speaking with you about. this
Yeah, yeah.
opportunity. But I don't say like. Thank you.
I would encourage you to explicitly put that in your cover letter. It's not too pushy. As the employer, that's what I'm hoping for too. I don't want to, you know, as much as I love reading your cover letter, there's a specific purpose for it. I'm looking for people to interview. I think it can communicate that you're an assertive communicator without being pushy. Aggressive would be like, you better give me an interview or I'm gonna come to your house. Like, you're not doing that, right?
You would
You're
like
being
to.
assertive. There's a fine line between assertive and aggressive. Don't get into aggressive, that's not good. But I think you should be assertive about what you hope the next steps will be. Any other questions or comments about that before we're getting very close to the end here and pizza will come at some point from somewhere. So that's kind of the cover letter formula. So here's what I hope you will do soon. A couple of things. A great thing to do before you finish your interview is to actually meet with, or before you finish your internship, is to actually set up a time to talk to your internship supervisor and kind of debrief your internship over the summer. And I think it can be really helpful, and you're never gonna have a better time to kind of have somebody show you a mirror, right? If you're sitting in your internship and if developing impact statements was really hard for you, or you struggled with it, go talk to your intern supervisor and say, from your perspective, what are the top 5 things that I accomplished this summer? What are the top 5 things that that were my biggest contributions that I should communicate to a future employer? Have that conversation with them. Update your resume before the end of your internship and ask your supervisor to review it, give you some feedback. Because it's likely that you're probably gonna call on that person to be a reference for you at some point. And it will be good actually for you to have a conversation with them about the internship and get their perspectives on what your greatest contributions were. Have a discussion with them about what you hope your next steps will be. Anyone here or on Zoom actually hoping to get a full-time job at the place you're interning right now? Or is that like a possibility or anything that's come up? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I'd love to, but they need funding. Yeah, well, join the club. Sometimes, has anyone ever heard like the phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know? That's kind of like the key to networking. I would actually take it a step further, and it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. Okay? The real point of networking and having conversations with people is so that they might not have a specific opportunity for you in that moment, but a week down the road, they might see something or they might talk to a person and say, hey, Madeline was looking for that particular type of job. I should share this with her, right? But if they don't know what you're looking for, they can't do that. So have a discussion with your supervisor, have a discussion with your professors, have a discussion with your friends, have a discussion with your friends' parents, have a discussion with your parents about what you're looking for, because those types of connections really can only come about if people know what it is that you're looking for and what you're aiming for. And then my last next steps, and I told you this was coming, go to your career center, go to your career services office. If you haven't already, bring your resume, have it reviewed, debrief your internship with them, start thinking about what your job search or your grad school search or whatever it is might look like. They are in your corner. They want you to succeed. And you're probably never going to be in another place in your life where you've got so much, so many resources and support at your fingertips for no additional cost. I was going to say for free, but you're already paying for it. And if you're not using it,
Might as well use it.
if you're not using it, you're paying for something that you're not using. So go. And then I just will restate over and over again, in the job search game, this is a quality over a quantity game. And the best time for you to start updating your resume, writing cover letters, starting to get a feel for what types of jobs are out there is while you're in the internship right now. This is the best time to do it. It's fresh in your mind. You can talk to people. You've got your supervisor kind of right nearby. You can talk to them really at any time. Caden says that he's used career services in college a lot. Yep. That's it is helpful. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a former college career advisor. Although I would like to think that what I did was useful. I think that's it. Any questions, comments, things that you hoped we were going to talk about and we didn't? Things that I did talk about and you hoped I didn't? Yeah.
Just a quick comment. I don't know how many of you go to University of Maine, but I was told that after you graduate, you have 1 year of access to the career center.
Yeah.
So even if you graduated, you can still ask them for help.
Yeah, most colleges will provide some assistance. Sometimes it's in a limited format or for a limited period of time, but it never hurts to ask. Yes.
I don't know how it is for like other people's majors, but for mine, on like our website, they have all these like different job boards that you can look at for different jobs. And so I've found that to be really helpful for like looking for internships and opportunities like that.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if you know this, but I've only gone to schools outside of the US. So career services wise, how applicable do you think that would be if I'm coming back and working in the States?
How helpful would it be to go to
Yeah.
careers? I mean, I think there is sometimes a little bit of a translation issue between either work internationally or international education.
Mhm.
And so oftentimes career services folks can help you to translate, not like language translate, but translate your experience into language that US-based employers are really going to understand and value. So I think it can be really beneficial for you to do that. Yeah. Any other questions, comments, thoughts, feedback?
I have a question.
No.
There we go. Like, what if they don't know what they want to do at all? Like, where would they, like, if they're really at a crossroads between, well, I'm assuming full-time employment,
Yeah.
maybe not going to school
Yeah.
or stopping their school or grad school, like, where would they, what would be some tips for that? Like, if they're really at a crossroads, and then what would you recommend?
Go to your career services office. You know, and I was career advising, and this isn't like a specific thing that I saw when we did the poll at the beginning of why people did an internship. But is there anyone in the room who's like, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, so I wanted to try something new? Was that anything that you thought about for your internship? Yeah? So? I mean, internships are great ways to explore different careers and try out some certain things that you may or may not be certain about. A career advisor can really help you to frame that language on your resume or a cover letter, and also help you to think of some different ways that you can continue to explore that interest. I often would work with students who would come in and say, I did this internship and I never want to do that again. And now I don't know what I'm going to do because I did that and I didn't, and I don't want to do that. And my advice or my response was always, crossing things off your list is as important as putting things on your list. So if you had either an internship or practicum or a job shadow and it resulted in you walking away and saying, I never want to do that. I thought I did. I never want to do that again. That's very valuable too. And there is such a thing as career exploration by deduction. And you just try a bunch of things out and you keep crossing things off the list. It's really a pretty iterative process. But oftentimes a career advisor can help you to kind of make sense of that and help you plot out what the next steps would be. Caden's saying, I wish I could shadow my coworkers in a remote format. There are some ways to do, job shadows and anyone heard of informational interviewing? You know what that is? So it's basically finding someone who's doing a job that interests you and interviewing them about it. It's a good way to make connections, to build your network, to learn about different jobs. And it's really like low investment because sometimes it only takes 30 minutes to an hour. It's a great way to explore different options. So those are relatively easy to do remotely because you can do Zoom, you can do phone, you can see people in person. But any other questions, comments? Yes.
Summary section.
Summary
How do you feel
section.
about that?
I feel like if you're writing a cover letter, it's not necessary. Because your summary really helps to highlight what the most relevant things on your resume are. And your cover letter is also supposed to do that. And so I do feel like if you're doing both, it's wasted space on your resume. But that's one of those items that other people are going to have strong opinions on. And we're all right. Except I'm right and they're wrong. So. One other resource that I would be remiss if I didn't give it to you, but is Maine Hometown Careers. And I'll actually grab some postcards for those of you who are in the room. And folks on Zoom, I'll give them to John and Juliet to share with you. But Maine Hometown Careers is a website that we developed, MMA developed, that has a bunch of information about municipal government careers, what types of trainings and skills and experiences are helpful to get into those. There are 486 municipalities across the entire state, and they all really need smart people to do all kinds of different things. And they can provide you pretty rewarding and stable careers in all corners of the state of Maine. So I would encourage you maybe to take a couple minutes and check out that resource. I'll bring you a couple postcards that you can take with you that have a QR code. So that's it.
Well, thank you, Peter.
Yes, my pleasure.
People on Zoom and in front of me, I encourage you to, reach out, as Peter said, his email's there and LinkedIn. But also you have a network within Maine Career Catalyst as well. So, we have employee partners, as you all know, like we're working with your businesses, but we're working with all of the other businesses as well. So if there's something that like you really want help with in terms of connections, we're there to make introductions for you. We're there to help you. And that's something that, if you would like to stay in contact with us, like Maine Career Catalyst does not have to end at the end of the summer, and we are all year round. So we can help you, even next year, if you're like, oh, there was that one person that came to talk at a panel discussion, and I met this person at this thing, like stay in contact. So for those there, you are part of the Maine Career Catalyst network. Stay connected and utilize that network. I also would be remiss to not thank, WEX has been the sponsor of this event. So we really like WEX for them, and they also have a lot of jobs open. And some of you might even be working there right now, but I want to thank them for sponsoring this event. I think everyone on the Zooms, I think you're all good to go. Thank you for staying an extra half an hour in your workday. Really appreciate that.
All right. Wonderful. And pizza should be here soon.
It should be here
I think.
soon. Are we still on the Zoom? Yeah, so.